Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Very good, great pleasure to be here with you this evening. As you said, unfortunately, I had a conference in Bedford today. It took me 3 hours to get back, which was an hour and 10-minute run. So yes, policing at the M25 remains an issue, I'm sure. Here this evening, obviously, crime and public order are a major theme of this meeting this evening. We've heard that from a number of your questions. I'm here this evening accompanied by Chief Superintendent Mariner, who is the Chief Superintendent for your area. So I have strong police back up here for technical and operational questions. As you will be well aware, I am not operationally in command of the police in any way, shape or form. I am just a brief reminder up there on the presentation in front of you, I am the civilian, the representative of the people of Essex to the police service, and now indeed since October to the fire service as well. So, Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. My principal roles are those of appointing or dismissing chief officers, setting the strategy overall for the county, and setting the budget and the council tax precept for the two services. I think this evening we'll concentrate on policing and crime. I think that's what the brief was. If you do have any questions about fire and rescue, I'm happy to pick them up and either answer them this evening or take them away with me. But really, I think the idea this evening was to focus on crime and public order. So, where are we really? I think you know, because I've spoken to you before, about the priorities that we have across the county. The Police and Crime Plan, which we published November a year ago, I think has shown itself to be fairly robust and very much in line with what the public of the county want, particularly the focus on local, accessible, visible policing and on dealing with antisocial behaviour as well as key crimes such as domestic abuse, domestic violence, serious and organised crime. The rise in violent crime is something we really need to get and are getting to grips with, and as well dealing with helping vulnerable people to be protected and of course improving safety on our roads. I would say that in the last 18 months since I've been in office, the main success has really been in regard to road safety. And most of our road safety indicators are going in the right direction, and I'm particularly pleased that the number of killed and seriously injured on the county's roads has been coming down in response to the tactics that we're using, and that's somewhere we work very closely together in partnership with our major partners in those areas. I know that you know that partnership has been very much one of the themes that I've wanted to promote for policing and now for the fire and rescue service across the county. It's by working with you and with other partners that we are successful in these areas. The Safer Essex Road Partnership involves us, both us, policing and fire and rescue. It involves Essex Highways, it involves your highways departments and South Ends, it involves the Highways England people, as well as other various bodies. We actually have a charity turn-up. We had a charity turn-up for the last meeting, which was very encouraging as well, offering money to help promote road safety. It's somewhere where it is working well. There are other areas where it's not working so well. And I'm sure you are well aware of the rise in police reporting crime across the country, but also here in Essex. I'll run through a fairly brief presentation about what we're trying to do about that now, but I'm keen to take your questions and try and answer them, so I won't take too much of your time standing here on my own hind legs just talking to you. I'll get to the questions as soon as I can. But I think it is important just to recognise what's happening in crime across the country and across the county. On a long-term comparison, traditional crime continues to fall. The Crime Survey of England and Wales says it's still on its way down. The difficulty is that we have a number of new sorts of crime, and we have more complex crimes in traditional areas as well. Adding those together, it is undoubtedly a bigger demand on police time, and that is binding resource. New sorts of crime, what do we mean by that? Well, there are some which are crimes where we've, I think, become more open to the public, more accessible to the public, and we're getting better reporting, particularly in the area of domestic abuse and domestic violence. And the surveys and stats that we have there, looking with third-party agencies, charities, victim support groups, as well as our own data, tell us that we're much better now at having those sorts of incidents reported to us, and we're much better at supporting those victims. So people are much more ready to come forward. The gap between what's really happening and what's being reported to the police has narrowed substantially. It's still there, but it's narrowed substantially. That's a good thing, because unless it's reported, we can't do anything about it. But of course, the more that's reported, the more there is to do from the policing point of view, and the more we have to work in very close collaboration with social services, with education services, with partner agencies across the piece. But of course, it's not just in those areas where we're seeing better reporting. There is also growth in crime in some of the key, more complex areas. Gang crime, we know that we've been seeing more gang crime across the county as the gangs have been squeezed by the Met's success in dealing with them. The Met have become tougher on gangs, and we have seen county lines extend into the county of Essex. I think the latest figures I saw said that we disrupted about 90 organised crime gangs in the last year. That's quite a lot, and it means that we are taking the battle seriously to these people, but it's not enough, and we have more to do. We also, of course, have the rise in internet crime. You can just hop back to the previous slide. The graph on the right-hand side of that just shows you what sort of growth we're seeing in completely new sorts of crime perpetrated through vehicles that just weren't there a while ago. So the internet is great for shopping, great for communication, and great for crime. Things that make life easier for criminals just as they do for the rest of us. We need to get on top of that. We are working with the National Crime Agency. We're working with the City of London Police and the National Lead on cybercrime. Our own Chief Constable, Stephen Kavanagh, is the national lead on digital crime. So we're very much involved in this and trying very hard to get ahead of it. But as you can see from that chart, that sort of crime is up by more than 200%, nearly 250% in the last couple of years. That's a phenomenal growth in that. It's fraud, it's child sexual exploitation, it's grooming, it's internet abuse, it's hate crime. All of those things are very real harms, and actually quite hard to police because it's crime that's being done from the bedroom or the study rather than on the street or in a public place. And it's actually strange but true that people can be very reluctant to come forward if they've been the victim of internet fraud. So we have got some successful cases where we've cracked those sorts of things, but I would encourage you to encourage your residents to come forward with that, because we cannot solve stuff we do not know about. And we can't prevent it if we don't know where the hotspots are and what the methods are for doing it. So we do need your help and your residents' help in dealing with this sort of stuff. Moving on, clearly that then means a substantial level of stretch for policing resources over the last 2.5 years now, I think, really, since we've been seeing that tick up. One of my roles, as I said, is to ensure the police have the financing to have the resources they need, and to help with the strategy to make sure we can deliver with those resources. I guess I must have been fighting quite well with the Home Office for a period of time to try and win extra funding, because the National Association of Police and Crime Commissioners decided to make me their lead nationally on negotiation with central government on financing last April. And working very closely with the National Police Chiefs Council and their lead, who is Dave Thompson, the Chief Constable of West Midlands, we pulled together a very robust database, evidence from all the forces across the country, very material piece of evidence from some work that we did here in Essex, showing where the stretch really is, and put that in front of the Home Office in a submission last September, backed up with another round of data in answer to their questions last October. And I'm pleased to be able to tell you that that landed, and that in the police funding round, and actually the announcement came out today, finally, we had a provisional settlement just before Christmas. It was finalised today and confirmed, which is good news. In the settlement that we've got, basically the Home Office has agreed to match fund any increase in council tax, and has agreed that that increase in council tax, the cap will be lifted. So you know all about council tax capping, you're in that world as well. We were capped at 2%. Last year, the bottom 25% of forces in terms of the level of council tax were allowed to raise by £5. We did that. That raised 3.1 million to invest in another 40 or so officers and more capacity in the 101 system, which managed to help us keep pace with demand but not get ahead of it, and invest in some more technology, which we're also funding through our own capital resources through selling properties that we aren't using well across the county. This year we've got more. So the good news is that we will have something like £9.6 million to invest in policing in this county in 2018-19.
Are you nearly concluding?
Sorry?
Are you getting to your conclusion, please?
Yes, I'll be there in a minute. I'm sorry, so we'll be... I'll just say this bit and then we'll go to questions. So, £7.5 million from council tax, that's a £12 increase, £1 a month for a Band D property, about £24 for Band H, about two-thirds of about £8, I think, for a Band A. That will give us, together with the efficiency savings that we've managed to make for the course of about £3.75 million, that gives us, after inflation, about £9.6 million to spend on new investment. That'll be 150 more officers, plus further investment in IT, making sure that those officers can spend more of their time with you out on patrol. That, I think, will be a material difference. So far the technology investment's meant about 20 minutes more per shift out and about. The new investment should mean that officers are out and about an hour more per shift in due course. You should see the difference. I think it's certainly gone down well with the force in terms of the increased resources. What we have said to all councils and MPs is we know what we've got overall. We will come back between now and the end of this financial year, between now and the end of March, and let you know in detail, district by district, what that's going to mean for you. Because obviously what you don't want to hear is we've got all that, it's going to be spent in Saffron Walden or in Clacton. You need to know what it means for you. It will be across the entire county and it will make a difference. That probably is the key part of the message, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for bringing me up short.
Thank you. Please sit down. Thank you very much. What we have is we've got, as you rightly said, Roger, that members have questions, and I've just counted. We've got about 16 members who have indicated their. I don't know if you're on the list. So we've got quite a few members who wish to speak, so I thought it might be best if you are able to answer members' questions. And to start with members' questions, I'll call it in a particular order, but just before I do that, there's a particular issue which I know we've raised before about boy races around the lakeside area. I'm sure you're able to address that, and just something I'd love to know what you're doing about that.
Am I allowed to refer a specific question like that to my colleague?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. Please.
So I know this is quite a concern for people. The issue has actually dropped down significantly over the last 2.5 years, but it is still obviously a persistent issue, which I'm sure you'll agree with. The police have got something that we're calling Operation Wagtail, and we're actually working at the moment with the Highways England, because this is a shared issue between us and Highways England. It's early days, but actually what we're looking at the moment, working with them, is to actually change the road layout in the area to prevent them from actually being able to do specifically what it is they're doing. It's obviously an ongoing piece of work, but in the shorter term, they're using something called visible central barriers, which will actually prevent some of this activity taking place and make that area unattractive to this behaviour. Something that we're obviously really keen to push forward with and deliver as soon as we can.
Thank you. Councillor, question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. With the increase in the unauthorised traffic incursions across Thurrock last year, and quite frankly, the inconsistency in approach when it comes to the use of Sector 61 powers, Can you outline what you'll be doing in the coming year to ensure not only consistency but better outcomes for people of Thurrock and indeed the whole of Essex?
Thank you very much, Councillor. I think well, I know you're aware because you've come to all of the relevant meetings that we've had across the county. So thank you very much for your support in putting this together. Basically, we have a partnership approach. We are trying very much to make sure we are consistent in the use of Section 61, indeed of all the powers across the county. We work together with the Essex County-wide Travel Unit, but we also have now a dedicated central unit of police officers who are very much up to speed with the new protocol, which we put together on the back of those meetings, about how to deploy the powers effectively. I'm pleased to say that pretty much across the county what we've been seeing since last summer has been an improvement in the way that we've managed to deal with unlawful incursions. I would just like to stress we're talking here about unlawful activity. We're not talking about any activity by gypsies and travellers. A lot of them, I would say probably 80% of them, lead law-abiding lives that are just a different lifestyle from ours. And we have some very successful encampments across the county, which work very well. But I'm aware of the issues that go together with unlawful encampments and incursions, and those we need to deal with. We had a very successful event back in end of September, October here, where there was a large incursion, and I think our response there was robust, and the presence of a large number of police officers did mean that they moved on very promptly. But I think you're right, it is that consistency of approach. It is the fact that therefore the gypsy and traveller community understand that they will not be allowed to behave unlawfully, and that will mean that we will be more successful. Looking at some of the boroughs across the piece, we've already had pretty much a halving of the number of days that we've had unlawful encampments in place. We need to achieve the same in Thurrock. It needs to be even across the piece.
Thank you. Can I please ask members and the officers that are in responding to please be as brief as possible so we can get through all the questions we've got. Councillor Snell. Thank you. Councillor Gerrish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Tonight I'll present a petition to Council on behalf of 1,276 residents. I have a copy here for the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. It calls for more police resources in Thurrock to tackle rising crime. And I hope that he'll acknowledge the strength of feeling in Thurrock on this issue, and I hope that he'll come back to us with not just words, but action to help Thurrock. Does he agree that Thurrock simply does not have the police resources we need, and will he commit to ensuring that Thurrock is a priority when it comes to assigning additional police across Essex? If I could ask Ian to give the thoughts.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Of course, we'll take this and digest it properly. I think from what I said initially, you will understand that we know that we need to do more, that the rise in spectral resources is very material. Yeah, across the country, what we asked for was around 6,100 new officers. Of those, about 5,000 in local policing and about 1,100 in the higher tech end, so firearms, counter-terrorism, that sort of thing. The proportions here in Essex have to be around the same. So it is very much the local visible policing that we need to bolster, because that is really where crime prevention works. And I think what we've seen over the last few years, as budgets have been tight, and there have been cuts in Essex Police, very, very material cuts. At the same time as we've seen that increased complexity of crime, we've seen a swing to dealing with those high harm crimes, and it's persistently been local policing which has been used as the resource for it. That's what we have to correct, that's what we have to get ahead of. You will see it here in Thurrock. Thurrock is always a priority within the county. The urban areas always need to be properly addressed. Equally, we can't neglect the good folk of Borley and Burley and Boscombe-cum-Mose. They also have their issues that we have to deal with. That's why we'll come back with the detailed plans we were talking about.
Thank you. Councillor James Holden.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Commissioner referenced the 9.6 million that will pay for 150 additional police officers, which obviously is extremely welcome. And here in Thurrock, we're going to be spending several £100,000 extra on antisocial behaviour following the budget that Councillor Head will deliver, several £1 million in surplus. But the Commission not agree that simply a flurry of money is not good enough, and we need to look at more ways for the police and council to work together. For example, Thurrock has got the best rated youth offending service in England for reducing reoffending, and quite possibly if the Commissioner were to look to a borough partner to lead the county on anti-gang activity, surely Thurrock should be at the top.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Good points, well made. It's very much to be welcomed that you are putting extra resources into ASB. As I said before, it is through partnership that we are most successful. I chair in my role the Essex Criminal Justice Board, Local Criminal Justice Board, and that's where we try and coordinate all the criminal justice partners together. Youth offending services are represented there, but actually the representative is from Essex County Council, and we were discussing only yesterday the fact that it would be good to have more direct representation and better contact with your youth offending services and indeed those in Southend, which are not as well represented as we'd like them to be. So I welcome your suggestion and we'll definitely follow it up.
Thank you. Councillor Joy Retzel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Hurst. Can you tell the Chamber what, if anything, can you do as a Police Commissioner to help the borough cope with the blight of motorcycles, which we seem to have at the moment, ruining parks and also being a danger on the pavements? There is also a danger on the road causing many accidents with drivers. I'm sure that the Council will work together with you to see if we can do something about the motorcycles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vessel. Again, very much a live issue. It was an issue at the Safe Essex Road Partnership Board last week. I think we are aware that here and in some other centres, and actually in my own hometown of Brentwood, it's happening as well. It's a very disturbing, disruptive, and threatening to many residents. There are new tactics that we have. We've been working with the Met on it. I think I might actually want to refer this one as well to the Chief Superintendent, if that's all right with you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask the Chief Superintendent to
Of
say
course,
a few
yes, sure.
So just to continue, so what we would ask for is people to be, so we're going to be putting pictures on social media of people that are riding these bikes. We need people to come forward with pictures of people riding these bikes. It's worked really well in Loughton, and we can then marry it up with our own records. Picking up on what the Commissioner said, we're the first force outside London to use Stinger on motorbikes. It was frowned upon for a significant period of time because Stinger works by bursting the tyres, and there was a concern that the bikes would fall over, unlike cars that just rumble along. But actually, because of the forward momentum of the bikes, they don't just fall over, that we've realised. So actually, we're starting to use these tactics in Essex, and it was actually used in October to great effect. And there's also other bits of technology which we're using, which we're trying to keep under wraps, but it's very forward thinking, and hopefully it will solve the problem soon enough.
Thank you. Councillor Jean Puffigan.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Hurst. We saw recently a police response to concerns that we raised as local ward councillors following a number of sort of street fights and brawls in the town centre, in Grove Town Centre, once the shops had closed after dark. The action was welcome, but I do fear the effects are rather short term. Last week there was still large groups hanging around outside Paddy Power, drinking alcohol in an area where alcohol is supposed to be restricted. And I do get it's not an alcohol-free zone, but it's still an area where it's supposed to be restricted. What I'd like to ask you is how effective do you think the current approach of a day of action or 3 days of action is in terms of promoting community safety in the long term? And might it not just be more effective to have more police walking the beat all the time, not just on special days or in particular spots?
In terms of the actual detail of the locality, I'll probably pass on to the Chief Super again. But in terms of your broader question, I think what we have learned is that pedestrian bobby is not the best place to deal with them these days. They can get around that pretty well as well. It works in terms of public reassurance. It has a remarkably larger impact on the fear of crime than it does on crime. I'm afraid that I don't think that an easy solution of trying to reassure people without dealing with crime is the route that I would like us to take. I think we have to do it the hard way, deal with crime and reduce the fear of it by having less of it. And that, I think, the days of action and the targeted mission intervention, if you like, is more successful, as far as we understand it, than having an appearance without the necessary action. But in terms of the actual local situation, can I hand over to...
So as you probably know, we've got a public space protection order in the area. We're really committed as local police to actually have police officers patrolling. It isn't just about the one-hit wonders, but as the Commissioner said, that stuff does help. I think many people will be aware that actually there were all sorts of horrendous things that happened in terms of, there was the incident with the War Memorial. The people that we're seeing in the town centre are changing, so it doesn't help, but it's not the same die-hard people that are actually in the area. So we will continue. We're working with the Community Safety Partnership team actually on some longer-term solutions as we speak in the background.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, correct.
Thank you. Carrying on a familiar theme. Firstly, the three Grays councillors for Grays Riverside wrote to you about problems in the High Street. Thank you for your reply, which you promised to forward on our correspondence to the Chief Constable. As we haven't heard from him yet, I just wondered if you could build on your previous answer and give us an insight into the long-term strategy to make sure that Grays High Street is both safe and liberated in order to fulfil its economic potential for the town. Thank you.
Well, I would just welcome the question, because I think you make a very good point there, which is that a peaceful, safe and secure society is one where people thrive, both in their domestic lives and in business terms. But in terms of the details for the High Street, may I again refer to my colleague?
So I think a lot of it comes down to literally what I just said, but I don't know if you're anticipating that question. So we're committed to still having a police presence in Grays Town Centre. We welcome the increase in resource that we're going to have, which is going to be dedicated to community policing. And I think one of my responsibilities is to make sure that we use that resource for problem solving rather than just putting people in the same area. As I said, in terms of, I can't talk about how the local authority are going to spend the money that was spoken about earlier on, but that is going to be directed towards antisocial behaviour. We'll be contributing towards that plan. It's just a little bit early to commit, but in the meantime, we'll continue to have a presence in the area.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you both for attending this evening. I'd just like to welcome and thank you for getting additional funding into Essex Police and obviously making sure that goes into new frontline officers. Very welcome indeed. My question is, I believe the police have the responsibility to enforce on the Manaway and Corridor. Currently we're dealing with a load of issues with lorries parking on the verges, and what I'm asking for is police action to try and put a stop to this. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor, and thank you for your kind words about the funding. A known issue, it was live as well in our recent meeting in Aveley. I think we have a plan in Aveley. I think we have a plan as to how to improve it. I believe that there is a meeting taking place in the near future, but I think again I might just refer this one on to the local expert.
So if I understand this recent issue correctly, it's due to the DP World closing their car park because they're building a much larger car park. Is that the issue that you're talking about? So it is actually it's creating a huge issue. Highways England have actually shut a number of different truck lay-bys around this whole area, which is meaning that the trucks are, in their view, having to park there. It's not something that we're willing to accept. We appreciate the question. We are in a position where over the next couple of weeks we will be working with the local authority, and we will start, our commitment is to start enforcing the powers that we have. Due to the type of road it is, actually it's the police that need to enforce it. Obviously we have to balance all the different demands that we have, but because of the strength of filling and the issues down there, it's something that we're going to move forward with.
Thank you. Although we've run out of time, I plan to take all the questions we've got so far. So we'll continue. Councillor Cathy Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recently, residents have reported to me that they've been the victims of physical assault, and they've reported them to the police, and were surprisingly told that it wasn't serious enough for the police to be worried about. Could the Commissioner please explain to me what he classes serious in regards to assault, so that we could, so residents know where they stand? To me, it doesn't seem fair that when you're reporting something to the police, they're told it's not serious enough. In fact, comments, please.
Commissioner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Councillor Kent. That sounds very serious indeed. Assault is undoubtedly a high harm crime, and the assessment by the Force Control Room is according to the National Harm Tree, crime harm tree, as to what does require an immediate response and what can be dealt with perhaps on a more measured basis. So obviously one can cite the difference between a live burglary and the report of a shed that's been burgled the day after. Those would be two things that get a different response. But assault is a serious crime, and I'm disappointed to hear that your residents had that response not in line with policy. And I think it would be a good idea to take it offline afterwards, get the details of the case and look into it.
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Richard, for your attendance tonight and your presentation, and also your presentation at Aveley on Monday night. The last time you attended full council, I presented a petition on behalf of 2,400 people of the residents of Corringham, Stamford, Haldon-on-Hill, surrounding areas, Fobbing, requesting a permanent police presence using shared facilities, i.e. like the Corringham fire station. When we spoke, you said this is one of the things that's measures that is on the agenda, and I'd just like you to probably update members tonight as to where we are on that one. Thank you.
Commissioner.
I think it can be a fairly short response, as indeed it was when public asked the question on Monday. Still on the agenda. I mean, we said originally we were targeting by the end of this financial year. I'm optimistic we'll get there, but maybe a few weeks later. But that's the track.
Councillor Sue Little.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. It's really following on from Councillor Redsill about the motorbikes around our borough, which are an absolute pain. And I know you've mentioned Stinger, etc. But I was reading that in the Met now they have a more effective way of dealing with these rascals, and that is actually a bump tactic, where actually a police car will go along and they can actually bump them off. And that gets rid of them quite quickly. It sounds really effective to me. But unfortunately, Essex don't use that. Why?
Members,
our police officers not so good at driving that they do this type of thing. If they can do it in the Met, why can't we do it in Essex?
thank you, Commissioner.
I would just say that I'm never going to be in favour of a tactic which is disproportionate to crime. If we're doing things which might endanger life, I'd be very hesitant about it. But this, I think here, is another area where the Chief Superintendent knows more than I do. So,
over to you.
I spent 20 years in the Met before I transferred to Essex, but I'll leave my opinion about that at the door. I think, so as the Commissioner said, we do have to do things based on harm, threat, harm and risk, and actually there can be quite considerable harm caused by bumping motorbikes. The Stinger is a very, very good tool that will work in very short periods of time. I'm not going to start making promises around the development of tactics, but we are, what happens in London has been recently translating into happening in Essex in terms of the Stinger and the other technology I was talking about. So I don't make any promises, but
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Victoria Holloway.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. There are two areas that have come up very regularly from residents, but also having seen myself as a resident and a councillor. The first is regards to antisocial behaviour. There is an area in my ward that has increased issues with antisocial behaviour, and whilst there have been meetings and engagement with the police and lots of talk of plans and being put in place, sadly residents aren't seeing any change to the antisocial behaviour in that area. I wanted to know, whilst I understand that the resources are extremely stretched, what should I tell my residents who aren't seeing any changes? The second is a rise in hate crime. There has been an extreme rise in hate crime, not just from people who are saying not very nice things that I've overheard, but also that are residents that are reporting with regards to people not belonging in this country or needing to go back to their own country. And I myself have been witness in the last 8 months to 2 physical assaults on people where it's been referenced that people should go back to their own country, that we've had to ring the police and the police have actually attended. So I'd like to know what the police are doing, what the long-term plan is to reduce the amount of attacks with regards to hate crime and what the strategy is there.
Thank you for both questions.
Yes, thank you. I think I probably might refer a bit about ASB and local plans back again to my colleague, but on the hate crime side, we definitely saw a big rise in the level of hate crime, particularly in the immediate aftermath of the June referendum in 2016. We reacted to that by working in partnership with people like yourselves, but perhaps more powerfully by working in partnership with faith groups. We had, together with councils, meetings across the county where we met with them, where we tried to understand where the tensions were and where we have, in collaboration with them, acted, I think, to intervene and make sure that we're preventing these things from happening in the first place. I'm pleased to say, I said earlier on that road safety is the big area of success. Actually, hate crime's not doing that either. And in the last few years, it has responded to the strategy we put in place. I think perhaps it's also dived back a bit from the virulent furore that we were seeing. I mean, the rise was 50-60% than we actually had. But it's back down again, and it's still on a declining trend. So I think what we're doing there is helping. Of course, it would be good if we can get it down to much lower than it used to be. But I think we have managed to respond well to that surge. But in terms of antisocial behaviour,
so there have been 448 fewer reports of antisocial behaviour in Thurrock the last 12 months than the previous 12 months. But it is something that affects a significant amount of people. To answer your question, people need to keep talking to us, because as has been alluded to, we will put our resource where we have the problems, where we perceive the problems. What we cannot have is people giving up telling us because they need to keep telling us. I'll be happy to take those details from you afterwards, and I can get my teams to look at that.
Thank you.
oops, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I please ask Commissioner Hurst, do you think, Commissioner, with the lack of police officers on the ground here in Thurrock, that some parts of our borough are becoming lawless, with an abundance of antisocial behaviour and other crimes that plight our streets, such as unlicensed motorcycles that has been mentioned, gang fighting? This, of course, affects our residents in their everyday lives. And do you agree that if such crimes go untackled, that some of these crimes worsen as a matter of no police intervention?
Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, firstly, I'd just like to reassure you that there are no no-go areas anywhere in this county. When we have had serious crime incidents, and when we actually had the need in response to the increased terrorism threat over the summer to mobilise the full force of the county, it was done, and I can't also say that in response even to international emergency, and this was more voluntary than directed from above, but Chief Superintendent Mariner led a team of, was it 7 people who went over to the council in response to their awful hurricane damage and helped out there as well. Not spending your money because they were volunteering to do it, but I think it just goes to show what sort of people we have in the force and what a great job they do in terms of responding to really critical incidents. So please don't get the impression that we are not in a position to react to what needs to be reacted to. Where I think we would like, well, I know we would like to do more, and where I think it will make a difference in terms of crime prevention. And your point about small crime becoming bigger crime and bigger crime becoming serious crime if you don't intervene early is absolutely correct. And that's what the research and analysis would back. That's why we want to deploy more resource in the uniformed local policing teams to do that prevention of antisocial behaviour becoming crime, becoming more serious crime, and break that cycle early on. So that's exactly what I was talking about in terms of where we will deploy the new resources that we will have on the back of the council tax increase and the better funding from the Home Office.
Thank you. Councillor Spillman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On your website, and when people come into your station, if they're reporting fraud, they're often referred to action fraud. Now, I deal with a lot of organisations, and action fraud is possibly the worst organisation, the most unfriendly, poor customer service I've ever experienced. Now, I know that's not under your direct control, but if you're referring people to that organisation as a matter of course, you need to make sure that they're being referred to a service that's fit for purpose. What can you do to use your influence to get that service up to scratch so that people of Essex, when they are victims of fraud, can actually hope to report crime, get a decent customer service and hope to actually get a result from it and not just be left with months, if not years, of that in a response?
Thank you. Commissioner? As a Chief Constable.
I will, Chief Superintendent, I will, actually I hadn't heard that before. I believe the Chief Super knows more about it than I do. I will pass it over to him if I may.
I'd just like to say that I had no idea. We're quite happy to refer to action fraud. It's volume crime. We're quite confident that they're doing a good job, but it's the first time I've ever heard it, which is fascinating. I don't know, therefore, what the complaints process is, internally or otherwise, but I'll take that. Because, yeah, as I said, I've not heard anything like that before.
Thank you. I think that's one to tick off within that outside. Councillor Collin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Hurst, for the presentation. As you know, HGV vehicles are breaching weight restrictions on our roads, and vehicles blocking junctions are a huge problem across Thurrock and difficult to police. I know that the Traffic Management Act does not allow camera enforcement of these offences outside of the metropolitan areas. But would you back any call for Thurrock Council to either try or be part of a permanent solution to have those restrictions lifted to make Thurrock roads safer and less congested?
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor, for the question. I think it's a very good point. And I think the straightforward answer is we welcome any assistance you are prepared to offer us in trying to, I say us, the force, in trying to find a way of enforcing the law effectively. So yes, if you want us to make a joint submission or whatever, I'm very much prepared to be with you on that one. Sounds like a good idea.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner. In Averley, we noticed a rise in car thefts from reasonably high-value vehicles using modern techniques to take the vehicles away. I just wondered, what measures are you taking to maybe give out better information to vehicle owners to perhaps go back to some of the old school preventative measures, aka crook locks and things?
Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, it's a very real issue, not just here, actually, pretty much across the county as well. I mean, we've had a spate of what you might almost call commissioned car theft, where professionals know what they're doing. They have these new techniques of grabbing the codes. Didn't know this myself, because I'm going to push button start on my car as well these days. But quite often as well, there's quite a lot that the resident can do, as you rightly say, to protect themselves. So it can be as basic as checking the door when you've pushed the button, rather than relying on doing it from 10 feet away, because the grabber stuff tends to grab it there and lock it. And if it's not locked, lock it again, and then you'll probably be safe. Also, don't leave the keys visible overnight. There's been quite a lot of car theft where it's been a really easy break the window. The alarm might go off, but by the time you've grabbed the keys, got in the car and driven away, the job's done, frankly. I have to say, with some of the vehicles, have actually recovered from as far away as Mombasa. So, you know, there is very professional crime being stolen to order for international crime. The old-fashioned crook lock is very effective and very discouraging, but there's actually quite a lot you can do without even necessarily having to go to those lengths. We are using social media to get those messages out. We are using Essex to do it. But if you can spread the message as well, please do.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor C. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question for the Commissioner, or maybe Chief Superintendent. It seems in Thurrock we're getting more and more drug crime, violent crime than ever before. Would you say it may be something to do with more and more London people moving into the borough? In which case, does the Met link up with Essex Police to try and resolve these crimes that we are facing?
Thank you.
So I'll let the Chief Superintendent talk about the link to the Met, because he knows all about that. But in terms of the first part of your question, I think it's not necessarily people moving here, but it's certainly county lines being controlled out of East and South London. And we're aware of that, and we need to work with our partners to make sure we crack it. But also there's a lot we can do here all together. Because these gangs prey on the vulnerable people in our communities. One of their key techniques is picking up on kids, generally boys, aged between 12 and 15, who are, from youth offending point of view, not someone you're going to deal with too harshly. So they know that they have a level, the people operating them know they have a level of immunity. They're not that hard to groom. A nice pair of trainers, a few packets of cigarettes, and you can get someone to do stuff they shouldn't be doing, and that gets them into a way of life which we don't want them to get into. So a lot of what we can do in terms of intervening with young people, distraction, better things for them to do, stuff that the fire service does very well, such as the fire breaks courses, which I know have been going for quite some time and have been very successful in taking kids who might otherwise go on a wrong course onto a right course and show them they can do something useful to society rather than be on the edge of it. Those things are fantastic in disrupting the ability of these organised crime groups to be successful. In terms of collaboration with the Met, if I may, I'll just hand over to the Chief Superintendent again.
So yeah, to answer your question, we work with the Met all the time, and we've got really good links. We share intelligence with them as well. We have our teams going to Met for their meetings, and we have their teams coming to us. I've actually got a meeting next week with the borough commander of our abutting borough. We've got a really good gangs team that work in this area, and they it's not just the stuff around stopping and searching people we believe involved in drugs, but also the hidden stuff around child sexual exploitation. Some of the stuff we do is overt, but also we've got quite a bit of covert activity going on. We work in collaboration with Kent when it comes to this kind of organised crime, which it can be. We've got a really good track record of dealing with some of this, but it's a constant battle. And as the Commissioner said, we have county lines that are coming from London. Some of it passes straight through and will go to other parts of the county. And it's something that we're well aware of and we're really robustly dealing with. And as part of our resource increase that we will have soon, some of that will be going into what we call our RAPT team, our gang team, that sit within our community policing teams.
Thank you, members, and thank you to Commissioner and officers. Have you got a final word for a minute or thereabouts, if you have, to summarise this, or?
Well, I mean, I think thank you very much indeed for your time this evening. We've picked up on a number of local issues, which is part of the value to us of coming here. I hope very much that we've given you some reassurance about the measures that are being taken and the successes that we are having, and some reassurance that we're aware of the challenges which are material and do face us, and we have a plan. We will make sure that you are properly informed about the detail of what that means for your area. I take on board the fact that you are very focused on Thurrock and want to make sure that Thurrock gets its fair share of whatever's going in terms of making sure your communities are safe. We need to get on top of this rising demand on policing effort. We need to do it in collaboration with our partners. You are an absolutely key partner, and I look forward to working together with you in